Hey everybody, welcome to Spoiler Piece Theater, the podcast that doesn't give a shit about spoilers. We just want to talk about the movies. My name is Dave Riedel. My pronouns are he, him. I write about movies, and I am a member of the Boston Online Film Critics Association.
My name is Evan Crean. My pronouns are he, him. I am co-chair of the Boston Online Film Critics Association and co-author of your 80s Movie Guide to Better Living.
My name is Megan Kearns. My pronouns are she, her. I'm a contributor to Edge Media Network, and I too am a member of the Boston Online Film Critics Association.
Yes, you are.
Huzzah!
Yeah.
Woo!
Huzzah. That's one of my favorite words.
Mine
Movies. That's what we're here to talk about, as per every week. And on the docket this week, we have Reminiscence, which is the new Hugh Jackman movie, among other people.
Mm-hmm.
Green Knight, which is the new Dev Patel movie, among other people. And Candyman. And I'm not going to do their names because everybody has a hyphenated name in this movie. We'll do that when it's time to do that movie. But Candyman, the sequel to Candyman.
From the makers
I love
of
it when
Candyman.
sequels have the same. I love that. So anyway, let's kick things off with let's kick things off with me telling you about what's over on our Patreon page. This is the last podcast of the month, so we had our monthly poll, and the subject this month was which amusement park based themed whatever movie would you like us to see, and the winner is the 1962 eerie sort of horror flick Carnival of Souls. And we had a really good time talking about it. So if you're a patron, please go check that out. And if you're not a patron, please consider becoming one so you can then go and check that out. Huzzah, as Megan
Huzzah!
said. So, huzzah! So anyway, the first movie we were going to talk about tonight is Reminiscence, which is written and directed by Lisa Joy. You may recognize her name from Westworld, among other things. This stars Hugh Jackman and Rebecca Ferguson and Tandy Newton and...
It's not Tandy Newton, it's Tandiwe Newton.
Tandiwe Newton. And too little Cliff Curtis, but in kind of a shoehorned plot. We'll get into that in a minute. Anyway, here's your 1 or 2 sentence log line from IMDb. Nick Bannister, which could only be a name that someone has in movies. Nick Bannister, a private investigator of the mind, navigates the alluring world of the past when his life is changed by new client May. A simple case becomes an obsession after she disappears, and he fights to learn the truth about her. True.
Yes.
Those are 2 true
Those
sentences.
are things that happen in this movie.
Hashtag truth.
Yeah. So, anyway, it is Reminiscence is like it wants to be noir, and it is, I guess you could say, neo-noir, right down to the unnecessary voiceover.
Yep. It is sci-fi neo-noir.
Yeah. And the strangely dystopian future in which apparently climate change has sunk a lot of places, but strangely not Miami. Miami is only
it's pretty sunk.
There's only 3 inches of water.
Yeah,
I mean,
it's mostly sunk.
It's basically turned Miami into Venice.
Yeah. Yes, that's a good way to put it. And so London no longer exists. You find out in the movie, for example. Yeah, she says she came from London and she being May, came from London, she went to New Orleans, and then she ended up in Miami. Anyway, what did everybody think of Reminiscence?
Well, when I hear Reminiscence, just the title, it makes me think of Bette Midler singing From a Distance. I'm hearing Reminiscence in the same melody, which is probably the best thing I have to say about this movie because...
Yikes!
I was bored to tears by this movie. I love noir, as we've discussed many times on the show. But this movie somehow managed to make noir boring to me. I got toward the end and I was just so annoyed with it. I turned it off when there were maybe like 5 minutes left because I'm like, look, it's just going to keep repeating the same crap. I'm done with this.
Wow.
Interesting. Okay, so we have someone who leans on the side of no fucking way would I ever watch this again. Megan, how do you feel?
No fucking way. So, okay. I actually really enjoyed this and I found this incredibly entertaining and I was not bored at all. This actually kept my attention throughout. And I know you are not alone, Evan. I know other people who did not like this. I did, though, and this is a flawed film. I will not say that it is, free from flaws. It is. I tweeted this when I tweeted about my review. I said it is not as innovative or insightful or memorable as it could have been or should have been. However, I found this really entertaining because of the great performances from Hugh Jackman, Rebecca Ferguson, and Tindy Way Newton, all three of whom I always love seeing. And I think that their performances really anchor the film and really worked for me. So I think the dialogue is really wooden and feels like it wants to be profound. Like I love Westworld. I should say that first right out of the gate. I love Westworld. It's one of my favorite TV series. I think the work that Lisa Joy and Jonah Wilson are doing on it are really fantastic. Or Jonathan Nolan, but he goes by Jonah in interviews. That's why I called him Jonah. Not like I know him. Anyway, I digress. But I think that writing is really sharp and really interesting and analytical. And I think the writing here, especially the dialogue, is really clunky and and it wants to be profound, like especially in the narration that Hugh Jackman as Nick is doing. It feels like, oh, I'm making this really profound statement. But no, it's just, they're just platitudes. They're just stupid. They're just nothing. So I think the writing is the weakest part, especially the dialogue. I think I agree with you, Evan, that and Dave, that the narration, you don't need to be so on the nose with noir or neo-noir where you need every little element. And so you don't need nearly as much narration. You don't even need narration, or you could have it.
There's a lot of narration in this movie.
Or you could just start with narration just to give the kind of neo-noir vibe. You don't need it to continue all the way through.
Right.
So that's a huge, huge problem in this film. Having said that, though, I found it entertaining. I thought the ending was very bittersweet, and it worked for me ultimately, despite its problems.
I think I come down somewhere in between both of you, but I lean more toward not liking it than liking it. I'm no Hugh Jackman fan, as you know.
I did not know this, actually.
Oh, you didn't know that? I mean, I don't dislike. He's no Ray Winstone, so I don't dislike Hugh Jackman. But he's definitely a case by case basis for me, and I think the material here really lets him down because I feel like this is the sort of he can do that sort of yearning, longing kind of thing with that seeming pathetic. See Wolverine in every X-Men movie. But the whole idea that, well, let me talk about what I did like. I liked some of the visuals, but not like in, when they're walking through the 3 inches of water down the street, like some of the overhead shots of what still is left of Miami and like the bed on the roof and all that kind of stuff I found really kind of cool. The market where, I can't remember what her name was, the woman that the rich guy was having the affair with, whose kid was stolen by Cliff Curtis, or attempted stolen by Cliff Curtis. That's a whole plot line. And I really just quibble with the whole idea that love will save us all, which is the kind of how the narrative is leaning toward. Rebecca Ferguson's character, May, is a grifter by trade, whether unintentional or not. And she is redeemed by Nick Bannister's love, and she pays the price for it, which is to have Cliff Curtis throw her off a cliff or something. I'm not, because it happens in a memory, so I'm not exactly sure where she got thrown off.
No, he doesn't throw her off. She throws herself off.
Right, to save
the kid. She throws herself off.
Right, because she knows, because he drugged her, that she'll reveal where the kid is.
Right, I beg your pardon. But the whole idea that just, Nick Bannister is going to be the thing that finally turns your life around.
If it's Hugh fucking Jackman, you're damn right.
Well, let's just assume it's Nick Bannister.
Yeah.
And he's just some fucking guy. He's just not that interesting.
Yeah. Nobody's hot.
As a character.
Oh, sure, he's hot.
I mean, kind of, building off what you were saying, Megan, the writing is really wooded. It is filled with platitudes. Like, I wrote a bunch of them down because I was just like, really? Like, time is a current, memory is the boat that sails against the current. Come on, people. And
don't forget, it's also a bead on the pearl of...
Yeah. And that's something we haven't really talked about, is that, like, he works in like an old bank where he plugs people in and lets them like relive their memories, or he's used, he works with the police to kind of interrogate people through this like hypnotized memory revisitation or whatever it is. So that's like an element, and the platitudes are annoying. I don't think his character is that interesting, and I normally like Hugh Jackman, but I feel like the performance is kind of flat. And honestly, I'm mostly blaming on the writing, just because overall, I just feel like this hits all the like standard beats of a noir, especially like the like corruption and like tawdry affairs and love child. Yep. Like I don't know.
We should mention the love child. I feel like
there was this opportunity here to do something really fun and interesting with like the sci-fi, angle, and, using the memory device and having this world that's flooded, due to climate change. I feel like there were opportunities to go maybe some more interesting directions, but I don't know. I'm sorry. Now I'm on kind of a rant here, but you get what I'm saying.
No. Yeah, no, totally. The one thing I agree with you on, well, there's actually more than just one thing I agree with you on, but one thing that I wanted to note is that something you both touched upon is that I think this really hints at a very potentially interesting world building, and because we get notes of this, like we get touches of it, like because Nick and Thandie Newton's character they're veterans, and they talk about a war, that there was a war at the border that they both fought in, and Nick's like veteran friends will come in and he helps them out, and he'll like give them reliving memories for free. And so there's hints of that, and we see hints of it with the submerged Miami, and we get hints of it about, climate change. But it never really delves deeply into its world building. And so it hints at something that could be great and something better, but something better than what we're actually necessarily getting.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I hesitate to say that that this is a nice touch. I don't know. I'm sure you both noticed that all the rich people live on dry land and all the poor people live in the submerged part.
Yeah, he says
Miami.
that.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Oh, does he say that?
I don't explicitly in his narration.
I tuned that out, and I just remember when he gets to the mansion, and it's, if you remember asshole Thomas Wayne from the Joker movie with Joaquin Phoenix.
I try to forget
he plays
that.
the rich. Yeah, exactly. He plays the resident rich asshole in this, although he's not. I guess he's not on screen long enough to know. His son is the, Walter Sullivan is his name, played by Brett Cullen. He has a love child with this woman who, the love child stands to inherit half of his fortune. So the legitimate, what a terrible thing to say. So the child of his marriage arranges to have him killed, which is how May gets involved in all this stuff, because she's a drug addict and she needs money for the drugs, and that's Cliff Curtis, and so there's a little bit more deep stuff. But I just, kind of with it just hits the tropes, and it's just, but I did appreciate. And like I said, I didn't hear this in the voiceover, so I thought I was just noticing something, that all the rich people live in dry land. I'm like, hey, the rich people live in dry land.
But see, that is a great touch. We just didn't need it hammered over the head via narration too. And that's the problem. That's the thing. I think there's a good movie here. And I know, like, I'm sounding really hard in it, but like in my review, I actually was very complimentary, because I did actually enjoy this despite its problems, but it could have been even better. And I think that's where I'm frustrated, is that I did enjoy it so much because of the acting and because of the ideas, but it just doesn't go far enough with them, and it's just not well written enough with those ideas.
Yeah. I really appreciated Rebecca Ferguson's performance and Cliff Curtis's. I am lukewarm at best on both Hugh Jackman and Thandie Newton. So
see, I think Cliff Curtis's performance was awful. And I was really surprised, because I've seen him in other things where he's great.
Yeah.
But Rebecca Ferguson, I'm glad we all can agree she's amazing.
Well, she's just kind of exquisite generally.
Oh, I didn't mean that. Although, yes.
I meant her performances more than I did how she looks. Yes. But that's, but I'm also not really sure what Thandie Newton's character was doing in this movie, other than to show up coincidentally having followed him at the bar where Nick goes to interrogate some gangster, and then she like fucking kills everybody there to save him.
Which I love that scene, and I think it's
a good scene.
Yeah, it's a great scene. She's great in it. I really liked Daniel Wu, who plays the kind of gangster. I wanted more from him because I found him potentially interesting, but we don't get enough of him. But he definitely left me wanting more in a good way. So yeah, I really liked that.
Yeah.
Yeah, I feel like this would have been more interesting if we I'm generally kind of done with, gangster movies, but there's an interesting story, I think, in like how gangsters operate in a city where there's like no land, or like what's the thing you're going after.
Yeah. That could have been interesting.
Yeah.
I did like some of the action scenes in this movie, although there were not many of them. The one you were referring to, the shootout in the bar, was good. And I liked the hand-to-hand fight with Cliff Curtis, where they're kind of like running on the rooftops and then, jumping around. I thought that was actually well choreographed and exciting. And it kind of piqued my interest.
Until the piano fell through the floor.
Yeah, it piqued my interest and I was kind of getting into it. And then it was so quickly ended.
Yeah. Oh, well, they can't all be winners.
No, I will say I'm not surprised that the action is really good because the action is, I think, really well done in Westworld. And the reason I keep talking about Westworld is not just because Lisa Joy is the co-creator and co-showrunner, but also because so many people from Westworld are worked on this film. Like Ramin Djawadi is the composer. He works on both Westworld and this, the cinematographer, the editor. They all worked on Westworld as well as on this. Tandiwe Newton is in the cast. Angela Serafian is also in the cast, and she's in this. She plays Sylvan's mistress. So I'm not surprised what things worked because the action works really well and Westworld is incredibly visually striking. But I'm surprised at the writing because it's such a great caliber in the show and not as good as it could have been here. But like I said, I still enjoyed this because I always love Hugh Jackman. And the acting worked for me.
Okay. Well then, anybody have closing thoughts before we move on?
Nope.
Okay. Megan, was that your closing thought?
I think the exploration of memories and nostalgia is a really compelling one, especially from a sci-fi angle. And if you can sell memories or you can get into a business of selling memories or reliving those memories, that sounds really like a slippery slope. It's very enticing, very alluring, but also very dangerous. Yep. And so I think this is a really great premise. I just think it could have been even better, obviously, if it had been delved a little more deeply and didn't hit the noir trope so much.
I can't believe none of us has thought to mention Total Recall.
Yeah,
with all the
that's
memory
true.
stuff,
You're right.
But
you're right. Yeah, it's fun. It's fun. Funny that you say that because when they're in the baths, it reminded me of the Precogs and Minority Report also being in like the baths.
Oh, yeah.
But you're right. Total Recall is a really good parallel.
Okay. Well, that's my final thought. So let's move on to The Green Knight. This is already out. It's written and directed by David Lowery, based on the ballad of Sir Gawain.
They call him Gawain.
Thank you.
Yeah, they call him Gawain in the movie, and then someone calls him Gawain, and no one corrects him.
Yeah.
Yeah. I don't think it's Gawain though.
No.
Starring Dev Patel as Gawain, Alicia Vikander in two roles. One as I don't know what you would call her. She's not his lover-ish.
Yeah, she's his lover.
And then one is somebody more malevolent, maybe. I don't know. And then also Joel Edgerton in a small but welcoming part, or welcome to me, I should say. And released by A24, who they do a lot of different kind of wacky stuff. And
that's why I love them.
This wacky stuff worked the fuck for me, man. I gotta say,
too.
I sent Megan a text when I had finished watching it. I was like, dude, that was the fucking best movie.
I told you it was great.
I just loved how it sort of makes sense, but it doesn't make sense. And but it sets up its own rules and it plays by its own rules.
Yep.
So who cares if it makes sense? And then I also liked how I don't know Arthurian legend too well, but I know some of the gist of some of the poems from that era. And I like how it kind of like weaved in another one that's not actually part of Gowen's legend, but I just dug all around. And I'm hit or miss with David Lowery. Ain't Them Body Saints drove me up the wall, but I really liked Ghost Story.
Ghost Story's amazing.
Yeah. So Evan, where do you come down?
I think somewhere I liked it, but I didn't love it. I appreciate stylistically what's going on here. I think it's gorgeous. Like, it looks really good.
Looks great.
It's kind of hard to see sometimes because of the natural lighting. I respect the choice, but I don't always love it when I'm watching a movie and I'm like, I want to see what's going on in the scene, but it looks kind of dark because we're just doing natural lighting. And I like Dev Patel. I enjoyed him in this role, and I feel like I enjoyed most of the performances, but I'm no fan of Alicia Vikander. I'm just going to put that out there. I think we've
Thank
kind of
you.
this. I think
you.
You could literally replace her with any other actor, and you would be unnoticeable in this movie. I feel like it's such a blank slate sometimes when I see her performances that I just felt totally uncompelled. That said, I was also enjoying I did enjoy when Joel Edgerton showed up, and I mean, I am not familiar with Arthurian legend at all, so I actually went on, I was telling Megan before we got on the mic, I went on kind of like a Wikipedia like deep dive rabbit hole on this. And I have to say, I do respect how much of like the legend is incorporated into this, and there's just a lot of thought that went into it, clearly, in exploring the different themes and the different interpretations of this. What would they call it, a ballad or a poem, I guess, this tale?
Yeah.
Like the rhyming scheme, the bob and wheel rhyming scheme, and how that's kind of incorporated here into this story, into some of the voiceover. I don't know. I thought that the special effects were really cool. Like, I loved when the fox started following him around. Like, there was just
dude, the fox was awesome.
There were just so many. Yeah, there were so many elements, and I was so worried something was going to happen to the fox. I was so glad it didn't. I like the guy who played the Green Knight. He's just
Ralph Ineson.
From The Office.
He's just got this great sonorous voice that's just like, it was so perfect for this like creepy supernatural kind of being. And also Sean Harris always creeps me out when he's in things, and so like seeing him play Arthur, I'm like, oof, you're creepy even though you're not supposed to be creepy.
Well, I actually found him like every time I see him too, I'm like, oh, here comes fucking creepy Sean Harris. But he's like a nice, warm, almost avuncular kind of. He is his uncle, so he's like, oh, you're so cool. Go on. You should tell us a story about things. And he's like, nothing's happened to me. And then the Green Knight shows up and things happen. By the way, I want to mention that the Green Knight's suit is like practical.
Yeah.
It's really cool.
I want to give, I'm sorry. I'm jumping ahead. I'm getting too excited.
Please go ahead.
Sorry. I'm like way too excited to talk about this because I love this so much. I'm so glad, Evan, that you talked about the great effects, because the special effects are done by Weta Digital, who always does amazing special effects, but it blew my mind when I saw this, and I saw this a while ago, and I did not know that it was Ralph Ineson actually in all of the makeup and all of the prosthetics to make him the Green Man. I assumed it was all CGI, and no, it's not. It's actually him in that makeup, and it's incredible.
Yeah.
And this is visually just so stunning and striking. I love the use of colored light, the green and the red and the yellow, to give this very supernatural, eerie quality to everything, very fantastical elements. And I love Dev Patel. I think I said in my review he was magnetic. I think he is just riveting. This is my favorite performance of his that I've ever seen him in. And I kind of love that like Gowan is like he talks a good game and he, boasts that he's not afraid, and he tells his lover, like, I'm not afraid. I wasn't afraid to hack the Green Knight's head off. But everything we see shows the complete opposite. Like, he's not the most competent. He's clearly scared shitless. And I kind of love that. I love that we get these contradictions within him, and he vacillates between emotions. And I just love that. And I also love Sarita Choudhury as his mother. I think she's so great in this. And I also think it's really interesting that she's just credited as mother, but she's clearly Morgan Le Fay because she's clearly doing magical machinations behind the scenes. Yep. But it's interesting because Morgan Le Fay is not Gawain's mother in the Arthurian legends. It's actually her sister Morgause. So anyway, but I loved that. And there's so many great things about this. The acting is great. The cinematography and the way it often spins, kind of reifying the cycles of life and cyclical things and the seasons and everything. I love it. I love the production design, everything about this, the weirdness, everything just completely worked for me. I was riveted. I was captivated. I just found this fantastic.
Yeah, I agree with all that. I'm not usually a Dev Patel, except for this part. I'm not usually a Dev Patel person. I'm kind of like, Dev Patel. But as I said in my text to Megan, he's exceptional in this part.
Agreed.
He's really great. And I like the fact that he's kind of a doofus. Not in the sense that he's like, duh, but that he's just clearly young, inexperienced, doesn't know what he's doing, is terrified. And eventually, we should mention, we didn't mention this, the game with the Green Knight is the Green Knight rides into this, hall on Christmas Day, and he's like, hey, cut off my head, one of you.
Well, he says land a blow on me. And the contest is that, like, you do it, but then a year from now, I have the chance to land the same blow against you. So just do with that what you will. And then he lays down his axe and, like, basically gets down on the ground to see what's going to happen. And Arthur hands Gawain Excalibur, right? To do what he will.
Yeah.
And then that's when, he lops off the Green Knight's head.
Well, that's the interesting thing. He doesn't have to chop off his head. He chooses to.
Yes.
Right. But then the best part is that the Green Knight just picks up his head and he's like, see you in a year.
I know. I love it.
It's so creepy. And I don't know. I was in my wiki rabbit hole. Like, apparently that was a thing in medieval times, like the focus on, like, a decapitation game or something.
Yes.
Played. And just, like, it sounds really twisted and weird.
Yeah, and decapitation
if you didn't have electricity or anything, then what would you do with your time? I mean,
I guess talk about decapitation. But it is interesting, too, that it's reified throughout the film that decapitation is a perpetual theme, not only within the game and not only within the Green Knight, but also with Saint Winifred, too, when he comes upon a house that he's staying in, and then he finds a woman and she's really a ghost, and she's like, help me find my head. And he's like, well, what's in it for me? And she's like, that's a ridiculous question. Like, basically, like, you should just help me because that's what nice people do. And I love that also reifies the decapitation theme that's going on here. And I also love that that David Lowery updated Saint Winifred to be a sexual assault survivor. I thought that was really interesting, that diverges from the myth a bit.
Yeah. Yeah, that does diverge. And I took a class called, so this is where I have to admit why I know about this stuff. So when I was a dumb sophomore in college, I took a graduate level class called Chaucer, and we had to read
Chaucer.
Everything. I know, but I didn't realize going into it, I thought we were going to get translations. Oh no, we had to read it all in its original language, and you could use a translation if you wanted to. And one of the side things we had to read was one of the many iterations of Sir Gawain and the Green Knight. And the one that I read, St. Winifred isn't in it, although I know she is in other iterations of it. So I just thought that was interesting that she's in this one. And also, as you mentioned earlier, Megan, that Morgan Le Fay isn't in it by name, but it's Morgan Le Fay. She's a big part of the traditional story. Other cool stuff, like, let's talk about this again. The fox. So
Yeah.
cool.
Love the fox.
Looks real. I mean, maybe it was a real fox that they just did the whole like, babe mouth moving thing with. But like when the fox starts talking, it's like when animals start talking when you don't think they're going to talk, you either get Summer of Sam or you get this. And this works a lot better. For those of you listening at home, if you don't know, Summer of Sam is that Spike Lee movie about the summer when what's the serial killer's name? The son of Sam was killing everyone.
Like Son of Sam.
And one of the things that he said in one of his interviews to decide whether he was competent in trial was that his next door neighbor's dog was telling him to kill these people. And in that movie, the dog's like runs into the room. He's like, I want you to kill. And it doesn't really work. Here, the fox who just delivers a stern warning like, hey, man, don't go search out the Green Knight and get your head cut off. That's ridiculous.
I think it's funny.
Go home.
I think it's funny that you went to Son of Sam because that's not where I went. I went to Neverending Story and the wolf that talks. And also someone else. Yes, Labyrinth. I also read a review that someone compared it to the fox that talks and says chaos reigns in the Lars von Trier film Antichrist too. So.
Oh, yeah. Haven't seen Antichrist. I know too much about it without having seen it. So.
But anyway, but usually, yes, when animals start talking like that, it's usually very ominous and menacing.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Yeah. But this one's just like, hey, I'm looking out for you. Come on.
Well, it's his mom. So, yes.
Right.
As we find out later.
Yeah. And I also like the whole like last temptation of Christ thing that it does where Gohan imagines like his entire future. He runs away from the night and he imagines his entire future. And it ends poorly for him. And
that's a great scene, by the way, that whole montage.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it really is.
And he just gets scummier and scummier throughout it.
Right. And his life gets shittier and shittier.
Yeah.
Right. And the part where he says, where his son is like mortally wounded in battle and he's saying goodbye to him. And it's just like, and it's all, there's no dialogue during any of this. It's just music. And it's so sad. So when he comes back and you realize he is going to stay and get the blow delivered to him by the Green Knight, you're like, oh, okay, maybe getting your head lopped off isn't so bad. And then we don't see it happen. The Green Knight just says, oh, you're a mensch.
Well,
off with your head.
Well, because he has this green belt that he's given by his mother in the beginning, and then acquires later from the woman in the house with Joel Edgerton. I don't know what the right word is, but basically is like, look at this thing that you can have. He's like, yes, please. Cause he knows that if he puts it on, supposedly like no one can strike him down. And so he's kind of like hiding behind the belt. And in this like vision that he has, he's been wearing the belt the entire time, literally doing everything, including like having sex. And then like when he takes the belt off, his head falls off in this like vision. So when he comes back to the night, he takes off the belt. He shows the knight the belt and then takes it off and throws it away. And that's kind of like when the knight's like, okay, yeah, you did the honorable thing. You're not like trying to hide behind like magic. You're actually here to like deliver on your end of the deal.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Now, here's where my memory of the original tale fails. And Megan, I have a feeling you'll know the answer.
Oh, I don't know. I might not. Pressure's on.
He does run away in the original tale, does he not? Does he not face the Green Knight? I thought
he ran away, but I don't remember.
I thought in my reading that he did, but the Green Knight didn't mortally wound him. He gave him kind of like a scratch, and basically was like, "Here, okay, you've admitted to the belt, or you've basically like shown me the belt and tossed it aside, and been like, no, so I'm not going to kill you." That's at least what I remember reading on Wikipedia. So I thought it was interesting that it was kind of like that, but also like you said, Dave, Last Temptation of Christ, you get that like kind of like extended like what if scenario.
Yeah, which I love that scenario, and I'm gonna crib right from my review. I found that was such a commentary on the ennui and the cycle of life and the fatigue and futility of war, and like what's the point? Why are we doing this? And I loved that. I loved that so much. I thought it was just brilliant.
Yeah. And I mean, I thought it was also like reading. It was also very much commenting on like the story as a whole, and this like idea of these like what they call them, chivalric romances, where you have this like character who's challenged in all these ways, and he's like put in situations where he is supposed to do the honorable thing, and he's been a bit of a mixed bag as a character leading up to this point. Like he's made some good decisions, quote, honorable decisions, some bad decisions, like giving into temptation with the second Alicia Vikander.
Right.
And so, yeah, I think that's interesting that you've kind of got this like back and forth, and you've seen that like human beings are flawed. This character is flawed. He's kind of been on this quest thinking that he's going to find some kind of purpose or honor just by going through it. And then to kind of see him faced in that ultimate moment with the choice of taking off the belt and being honorable, and then actually making that choice and kind of, I'm going to assume, get rewarded, because I feel like the Green Knight is just kind of joking when he says, well, off with your head. But that's my read on the situation.
But that's where the story ends in the movie. Mm-hmm. So we don't really know. Because you could make the way I interpret it is, well, once he takes off the belt, the story's over. It doesn't matter anymore. It doesn't matter what happens next. Because as you said, Evan, he's done the honorable thing. He's, made himself at the knight's mercy, for lack of a better term. So anyway, yeah, I just dug the shit out of this, and I can't wait to watch it again. And sword and sorcery kind of stuff is not usually my bag. Like, I just have memories of like trudging through Excalibur, John Borman's Excalibur, for example. But this was hot shit.
Yeah, this is an intoxicating delight. Something else.
Oh, that's a good way to put it.
Thank you. Again, I'm quoting myself. Something we haven't talked about that I think is really important, and there was a really fantastic article at Film Days that gets into this about, and it's by Konstantina Buhalis, and it's about the casting of Dev Patel, a brown man, as Sir Gawain, and how it's just the casting of someone other than a white person as a knight in this tale of chivalry and knights and royalty is really, I don't think they say revolutionary, but I'm going to kind of say it. And we don't see it often enough, and we don't see enough people of color in historical films, and even in fantasy, like historic fantasy like this. And I think it's really great. And I think it also adds another layer that's really interesting, thinking about royalty and colonialism and all of that, having someone who's not white. And I think it's another great touch to this film that just adds another layer of complexity in an already fascinating and complex film.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I like they cast him in this.
Me too. Any closing thoughts, gang?
See this immediately because it's amazing and weird and wonderful.
Yeah, I'll go. I'll second that.
Yeah. Oh, this just makes me want to see everything David Lowery has done.
Skip ain't them bodies saints, but otherwise.
Nope, I will not. I'm going to see it all.
Alrighty. Evan, anything from you? Or are you all done?
I'm good.
Okay.
You're all done.
So we will move on to Candyman. And this is from IMDb, a quote, spiritual sequel, unquote, to the horror film Candyman that returns to the now gentrified Chicago neighborhood where the legend began. That's not really a great, first of all, it's a direct sequel. It's not a spiritual sequel.
Yeah. It's a sequel that kind of, it like takes elements from the first one and then it builds on top. It's more like a mythology world building kind of sequel. But there are times where I feel like it comes at you in ways that you're like, oh, it seems like they're reinventing the mythology, but then they kind of circle back around. They're like, no, there's just more to it than we were, supposedly in the first one.
Right.
I mean, the reason they might be calling it a spiritual sequel is because it's ignoring the second and the third films. So it could be the reason why.
Sort of.
I'm saying that could be. I don't know.
It doesn't. It gets into the whole affair that Daniel Robitaille had, which you don't, with the white woman he was painting, which I don't think you hear about in the first one. I think you hear about that in the second one, in Farewell to the Flesh.
I've never seen the second one, and I knew about it.
Yeah, well,
so I don't know.
There you go.
So whether it's and I just saw the first one again and I thought it was in it, but maybe not. Maybe the painting's not in it. So yeah, you're right. I think the painting is not in it, but the fact that he was with a white woman is
they
in the
talk
first
about
one.
it, and they have the paintings on the walls and his lair in the first one, where you kind of see the backstory being told through the paintings.
Right. Okay, it's coming back to me now. By the way, where he sleeps, I mean, I thought he was like immortal, but whatever. That's the first Candyman.
Right.
Which I think that actually it would behoove you if you had an interest in watching this. I think you should watch the first one.
Yeah, it's
Absolutely.
definitely helpful to kind of set the story, but also to kind of see the differences between the two, because I think the first one, it kind of hints at some larger themes around like racism and trauma and gentrification, and like it does dig into them a little bit. But as I was watching it, I feel like the movie kind of descends into jump scares and like just trying to throw shocking imagery at the wall. And I feel like this one, for me, more it did a better job of really digging into those themes and integrating them in the story in a way that I think made more sense and also gave more opportunity for you to like think about them.
Megan?
Oh, we're getting into what we
Yeah.
think. Sorry, I thought I was thrown off slightly. Sorry about that. So I think the first film is great, and any kind of sequel or second film, third film, a trilogy, what have you, series should be able to stand on their own. I will say I did like this. I found this really interesting and entertaining. However, I feel that this Nia DaCosta's new Candyman, for me, doesn't really separate itself enough from the first one. And whereas the first one felt really new and different and interesting. And I love that horror is political. I love when horror delves into social justice issues. And I love that this one does too. But for me, it doesn't feel like it's digging in deeply enough. And I had some issues with the film, and Angelica Jade Bastian at Vulture and Robert Daniels at Polygon discussed this much better than I can about what the issues with the film are, about its themes and its messaging. And I love that it's talking about and dealing with gentrification, obviously, and white supremacy and police brutality and racism and all of these really important issues. But I don't feel like it's really digging into them deeply enough, not for how hard it's coming in with its message. And not every film needs to really delve deeply into those themes or messages. But if you're making that your real focal point, which this film does, I feel you really need to tackle them. And I don't feel that it does. It feels very surface level to me, which I think is a big problem. I also don't really know a lot about the characters. Like we don't really learn a lot about Anthony, the protagonist, who's played by Yahya Abdul Mateen II. And he's a great actor. I love him, but I don't really feel like I knew a lot about his character. Although I did find his kind of descent, his unraveling, interesting to watch, and how the film becomes body horror. I found that really interesting too. But again, for me, it's just too surface level. It doesn't get into things deeply enough, and I wish it had gotten more deep. I will say I love the visuals, though. I love the shadow puppets. I love the silhouettes that
was the most effective thing for me.
Absolutely. And it's inspired. Nia DaCosta said in an interview with Fandango that was inspired by the work of Kara Walker, who is known for her silhouettes. Her work has been at the MFA and as well as many other museums. And it's really unsettling and striking, looking at racism and white supremacy and Black people. And also Lottie Reninger, who was a groundbreaking animator who did shadow puppets. And I found that really, really beautiful. And I love the mirror imagery.
I liked that
and
too.
Yeah, that was really great. Like, I think there's some really great visuals here, but it's great to look at, and it's delving into it's bringing up great things, but for me, it just doesn't delve into them deeply enough in the way that I wish it had.
Yeah, I feel like it's an unfortunate melding of sequel and world building, to borrow what you both have said. Like, for one thing, you have to know what Cabrini Green was. I mean, because the movie, it just kind of glosses over gentrification. But the thing about the first Candyman is Cabrini Green still existed when they made the first Candyman, and they shot it, parts of it there. Not much, because they shot most of it in LA, but the exteriors they did there. And if you've been to Chicago and where Cabrini Green was, all of the towers are gone. I don't know. I don't remember the low buildings like you see in the movie, like what their status is, but let's just assume that's right.
Yeah, there's only like a couple left or something like that. So that is, I think, accurate.
Yeah. But what I think that I didn't really buy was Anthony, the main character in this movie, is a character in the original. He's a baby who's abducted by Candyman. And Candyman is like, I'm going to like sacrifice this baby. And Helen, Virginia Madsen, while she's kind of being seduced by Candyman, but also like kind of skeptical of it and weirded out by it. And she ends up saving Anthony from a bonfire and then dying in a fire. And her creepy husband, who's played by the guy who gets the sword through the head in Terminator 2.
Yeah.
I love that you brought that up.
He's good at playing
he says her name. Yeah.
Yes, he is.
And this is, I think, a really poorly directed scene in the original one, because, you say Candyman's name in the mirror 5 times and he shows up and he slices you from, basically your groin to your gullet, as they say. And her husband says her name, Helen, 5 times, but it's clearly going for like, it changes. It should have been like, oh, Helen, like that kind of thing. Instead, it becomes more like Candyman, and then she shows up burned to death and she kills him, and that's how the movie ends. And so they just kind of ignore all that, which that's fine for this. But to make Anthony the main character, and then to make him sort of turn into Candyman, sort of, it's not really what was going on in the first movie. Well, Candyman was going to sacrifice him.
And, so I feel like they allude to it in the first one, that this idea that Candyman has these like acolytes who are like worshiping him and have some type of hidden agenda, which we learn about in this movie through Coleman Domingo's character. He's one of these acolytes, and he's basically trying to create another Candyman, but like, there's this kind of, I want to call this movie Candyman Legends or something, because it's kind of like we've got, or Candyman Avengers, because we find out in this that there are multiple Candymen, and they're from different periods and different situations where black men were killed unjustly. And so they've kind of like risen from the grave to like, dispense some type of justice. But like, there's this idea that they're going to turn Anthony, they're going to like sacrifice him and turn him kind of like into an avenger of the neighborhood, which kind of comes up at the end after he's gunned down by the police. And then he just makes mincemeat of this like squad of cops who mowed him down and are trying to like get away with murder. So I dug that personally. I thought there was something interesting there, this idea of the Candyman's acolytes, but it is kind of an underbaked idea through both films. And I would have liked more info there, but I liked how it came together at the end, how he became Candyman, and then there was the original Candyman that shows up as well, and so there's all kind of like,
I love that Tony Todd showed up for one brief moment.
Yeah.
Oh, that was perfection.
And then he just says, tell everyone.
Because like in the first film, Candyman is he's kind of more of a chaos villain, where he's just killing people. Like, he's not really killing people, like, because he kills people in the neighborhood. It's not like he's just like, and so I like this idea of,
which never made sense.
And so I like the idea that they turn the new Candyman, like he's working for the neighborhood essentially to kind of like avenge people. But I'm sad that just comes up at the end, and we're like, okay, now we're left with this idea that there's multiple Candymen running around with different agendas, but they're all part of like one crew.
Right. Like, yeah. But I will say you're right, but it kind of doesn't all come together because I was watching very closely and I'm like, okay, is it only going to be white people who die? Which I'm totally fine with that. And I'm watching, but that's not the case. There's a black girl who is killed by one of the Candymen. And so it's not just protecting the neighborhood. It's not just avenging black people and taking down white supremacy and taking down, white people, it's kind of undercut by that, unfortunately. So I wish it had either just been white people or it had been fleshed out a bit more.
Which scene was that?
Yeah, it's a flashback to when the Coleman Domingo character was a kid. I'm assuming this is when he becomes like one of the acolytes, is like his sister and a friend are doing it, the Candyman thing in the bathroom, and they get murdered.
But see, that's another thing too. So I love Coleman Domingo. I think he is one of the absolute best actors out there. I love him. I adore him. I think he is wonderful. I'm always excited when he shows up. And so I was very excited that he's in this. But and as great of an actor as he is and as great as his performance is, again, I feel like we're not getting enough. Like, I didn't buy that all of a sudden his character is this acolyte, that all of a sudden it just didn't, for me, it didn't work. It didn't feel like a twist that worked. It didn't feel like a turn that was earned. And so I wish we'd gotten more about his character and more about his background, something more. Even if it was just like one scene, I needed more.
Yeah, I would love to know how the screenplay for this came together, because Jordan Peele is one of the writers. And to me, it felt very Us-esque in the way the explanation happened. Just, that whole thing with Hands Across America and whatever, and how this just, a lot of this felt shoehorned, but not because it wasn't thought out, because it was like Candyman 101. And what you really need is like Candyman 201. You know what I mean? I'm talking in terms of like college level.
I know what you mean.
That's, of course, I would definitely enroll in Candyman 101 followed by Candyman 201.
I feel like this definitely needed to, I like that it took, the idea of Candyman and explored the acolytes thing more, but it just, so much of it seems so truncated, because I feel like they were trying to fit so much in.
1 hour and a half.
Which is what I mean when I say which is what I mean when I say 101. Yeah, this you could have done another 15 minutes in this and it would have been fine. I think.
Yeah.
Agreed.
It did feel tight.
I think it would have helped tremendously.
I mean, like, I'm not complaining when a movie usually tries to stay as tight as possible, but maybe if it were a little longer and a little more fleshed out, then I think maybe you two would appreciate it more, it sounds like.
Yeah, no, definitely, because it's got great ideas, and like I said, it looks great. But also, something I wanted to bring up that also is kind of, again, talking about how it has all these ideas, but Dave, great word choice with truncated, because you're absolutely right. That's exactly how it feels. When Anthony is doing his art show, or he's in the art show, and there's a white art critic who is basically brushing off his work, like, that she's seen this before. It's very basic. It's redundant, and which it kind of is. I don't think she's wrong per se, even though she's pretty nasty about it. But it really reminded me of Rada Blank's fantastic film, The 40-Year-Old Version, which is also talking about Black art and Black artists and how white people consume Black art and how they co-opt it and interact with it. And again, it feels like it's something that's being touched on, something really important, but it's so glossed over. And again, it just feeds into all that. There's all these ideas, which is amazing and fantastic, but I don't really feel like they all coalesced in a way that feels as impactful as it could have or should have. The one thing, also, I'm kind of going on another tangent, but the other thing I want to say that I do really like is, I know this is in the posters. It's like, say my name. It's in the film, say it. And that very much is evocative, obviously, of, hashtag say her name, about Black women who are killed by police brutality. And so I do really like that idea is woven throughout this film, and that imagery, without being so obvious about it. I mean, it is obvious when you hear it, but it's not like spelling it out.
Yeah. The touch on a couple things I liked and something I had a problem with. One of the things I had a problem with is Teyonah Parris's character, Brianna, who's she like an art. Well, she's Anthony's girlfriend, but she's also an art
curator, I guess.
She curate. Yeah.
Yeah.
You get the feeling that, I mean, there's a whole backstory with her that she and her brother sort of touch on, that their father was a tortured artist who you see him, kill himself. But I just feel like, all right, so we know that. Is that really enough for her to have this whole, like, this is why I hang out with artists thing? I mean, I don't know. I think I need more than that. I also, because Vanessa Williams was in the first Candyman and she's Anthony's mother and she plays Anthony's mother here, I would have liked more of her just kind of talking about if she had noticed any of this behavior in him over the years or anything like that. And also
that would have been great.
And also the connection between the the art, the graffiti in Cabrini Green alluding to Candyman's story and whether, he was influenced by that as a child or because, but she does mention that they left Cabrini when he was about 2, I think she says.
Yes.
So maybe it wasn't, but it just, and here's something I did, 2 things I did like. We were talking about the mirror thing, but I like how Candyman is invisible when he kills everybody until the end.
Mm-hmm. But you see him in all the mirrors and reflections around.
But you see him in all the mirrors. And and you see him right at the beginning when Anthony says Candyman 5 times in their apartment. He's then in the next shot when you see him and reflected in the glass, like way back, soft focus. And you're like, and I was just like, oh my God, he's already. And I always thought you had to say it 5 times in a row. I didn't know that you could like say 4, take a break, and then come back and do it again. So, I thought that was really cool.
Maybe they're playing fast and loose with the rules.
Maybe
here.
they are. And I liked the idea that the bee sting just eventually turns his whole body basically into, it looks like a combination of burn victim / human honeycomb,
Yes. It's so disturbing and such a great visceral visual.
Yeah, but then when Coleman Domingo saws off his hand and puts the hook in there, I'm like, okay, I've actually seen enough.
Yeah,
I didn't think I was going to get to this point.
Much. That was a bit intense of the scene because you see him saw it off and rip the hand off. Yeah, it's a bit much.
Yeah. I mean, at least at that point, Anthony is already into his transformation, so it's not like he's sitting there screaming in pain, but it still is
He is crying, though.
He is crying. That's true. It is incredibly disturbing.
That was almost more disturbing to me, just that single tear, than if he had been screaming.
Yeah, maybe. I mean,
yeah.
I don't know. I just feel.
I will
go ahead.
I'm sorry. I'm sorry. I'm getting too excited. I will say one of the things or actually the thing that I think this film does the best is, as much as I like the original Candyman, and it has some missteps, but it is a great film and I really do enjoy it. It is still as great of as aware of racism as Helen is, because she talks about, how she was helped so much, by cops because she's a white woman and, initially, which is a very true observation. I do very much like that this film does not center a white perspective, does not center, anyone white. It centers a Black person as it should. And I really like that. But I agree with you, Dave. I really wish we'd gotten more of Vanessa Williams. And as soon as I saw her name in the cast, I was like, oh, okay, he's going to be the kid and that's his mom. And we're going to see their interactions. And and we just get such a small amount of it. Yeah. But I do love that change. Also, speaking of the kills and speaking of being invisible, I love the shot, the really wide shot when the art critic gets killed. Yeah. And it feels very rear windowy, and I love that.
And creepy, because it's coming, but at the same time, there's something, maybe because we're so far away from it, and she's just kind of standing there, and for a hot second, you think, all right, she's not going to be killed. Whoa, he's pulled her up, he's grabbed her by the throat, and she's hovering in midair.
There's something even more disturbing at that distance than even if, you had been more close up and seen that. And I will say, I think that is really, really well done with the visuals and the camera work in this film is how it, oftentimes, a lot of times when you hear something, it's more disturbing than if you see all of it. And I think the way it plays with what you see kind of ties in with the whole mirrors, reflections, all of that. And I think that's done really, really well.
Agreed. Yeah. The scene with the art critic getting killed and the slow zoom out from her apartment window. Oof, made my skin crawl.
Yeah, Ed made my
Yikes.
screen call talking about it just now, 2 minutes ago.
I know, right?
Oh, you can believe I am true story, not true story, movie, whatever. I will never say Candyman 5 times in front of a reflective surface ever.
Hell
Me neither.
no.
No Bloody
way.
Mary either. Not doing that.
Oh,
No, I am not superstitious normally, but I
take
am
the
not
risk.
tempting fate on that.
That's all I'm saying. Why?
Right?
yeah,
Right.
exactly.
I am 99.9% sure that it is completely fake, but yeah, just never know.
If that makes me a foxhole Christian, then okay. So, because you only
What?
World War II, you only become a Christian when you're like,
Oh, yeah.
So, anyway, does anybody have any closing thoughts on Candyman other than the fact that so happy that Tony Todd showed up in the last 30 seconds? But
Tony Todd's so great.
he's so great at so many things, and he just never got the due he deserved. But that's a whole
he's just
topic.
so charismatic in the original Candyman. So I was really glad to see him here. I will say, I know I'm being really hard on this film. I will say I did really like it. I think it's a really interesting film. I think I wanted more, but yes, but it's still an enjoyable film.
Yeah. But to me, the thing that was most effective was the closing credits with the shadow puppets.
Oh, yeah.
So stick around.
Yep.
Oh, those shadow puppets are so good.
I mean, that's truly
Yeah.
eerie. Yeah, haunting. Exactly.
Yeah, I did not see the trailer because, as you guys know, I typically do not watch trailers. But I did see the little featurette, that was shown months and months ago with the shadow puppets, and I was like, "Oh my god, it's so creepy."
Yeah.
But they're very well done. Loved it.
All right, gang. Closing thoughts on
I'll just
Candyman,
say that I loved this movie. I know you both had some gripes with it, but I really enjoyed this and thought this was like a really effective sequel. And I loved the world building / the ways that they weaved in the original Candyman movie. And a couple times in ways where I was like, oh, it looks like they're doing something different. They're going to ditch the mythology. And I was like, no, we could come back around and loop back into it. So I'm psyched about this movie.
Oh, I love that.
There you go. Megan, do you have closing thoughts?
No, I think I've said it.
All right. Well then, okay, let's review real quick. The Green Knight, or rather, start at the top. Reminiscence. That's on, I want to say HBO Max right now.
Yes.
And it's a pass for me. How about you? Both.
It's a hard pass for me.
So I would say see it because despite its issues, I still found it really enjoyable. But I recognize it's obviously your mileage may vary, but I would say see it.
Okay. So then I had said Green Knight, and I mean Green Knight. How do we feel about that?
Love it.
Okay.
See it. Love it. See it.
Yeah.
See it again.
I agree. You can rent it, Evan. And how do you feel about Green Knight?
I come down a little bit more middle of the road. I enjoyed it. I think overall I'd say see it. I think for someone like me, it's not typically my kind of movie, like a little more, I don't know. The stuff that delves more into fantasy is not normally my kind of cup of tea. So I think I would say see it, but I would probably recommend if you don't feel like you're going to be super into the fantasy elements of it, maybe wait till it comes down in price a little bit on the rental. Because right now it's like $20 to rent.
Right. It is a pricey, but I would say it's worth the 20 bones, especially if you're watching it like two of you, you know?
Yeah.
Then it costs less than going to the movies and you probably won't get COVID. Candyman.
That is true.
Yeah, Candyman is out in theaters, and I think in about a month it'll be on HBO Max for a lot of money, probably $15, $20. But I'm going to say go ahead and see it, just because I think there's enough of it that works to be worth seeing. How about you all?
Yeah, I would say see it.
And I think you would be. I think you both know that I would say see it. Hell yeah, see it.
Yeah. Okay. All right. Well, gang, that is the Spoiler Piece Theater for this week. We want to thank you for tuning in. And so now you know where to watch each movie. And we want to say thank you to our editor, Otto, so much for editing the show and doing basically the hard work. I mean, it's like watching movies. I mean, how hard is it? No, I'm just kidding. But thank you, Otto, nonetheless. It's really great that you do this for us each week.
Thank you, Otto.
Wanted to say you can get Spoiler Piece Theater anywhere you can find podcasts. If you want to go to our website, it's spoilerpiece.com. If you want to follow us on social media, we're Spoiler Piece Theater on Facebook, and we're at Spoiler Piece on Twitter, Instagram, and Letterboxd. If you would like to get in touch with us, send us an email, for example. Let us know that, no, Candyman Farewell to the Flesh is the best of the Candyman after you've seen the new one. You can email us, spoilerpiece@gmail.com, or you can give us a call
at 862-21-PEACE.
Leave a voicemail. Let us know what you thought. Tell us why this is actually the greatest Candyman, or why Reminiscence is better than we think it is. And if you really, really like the show...
I was like, I said it was okay. Okay.
If you really, really like the show, please rate and review us by going to ratethispodcast.com/spoilerpiece. And if you really, really, really like the show, that's 3 reallys. Please consider joining... Please consider joining our Patreon. Again, this week we watched Carnival of Souls, which is the winner of our monthly poll that patrons, we throw up 6 movies, not in the throw up like barf way, but we throw them up on the wall and then you vote on them. I'm just going off all sorts of deep ends tonight. I apologize. Anyway, the patrons came out in force and they voted for Carnival of Souls, and we had a really fun talk about that over on the Patreon. Mm-hmm. That's it. My name is Dave Riedel. I write about movies. I'm a member of the Boston Online Film Critics Association, and you can follow me on Twitter, Instagram, and Letterboxd as Dave Sees Movies.
My name is Evan Crean. I'm co-chair of the Boston Online Film Critics Association and co-author of your 80s Movie Guide to Better Living. You can follow me on Twitter, Letterboxd, and Instagram as Real Recon, and that's real as in film reel.
And my name is Megan Kearns. I'm a contributor to Edge Media Network. I, too, am a member of the Boston Online Film Critics Association. You can follow me on Twitter at OpinionSWorld and on Instagram and Letterboxd at The Opinion S.
And we'll see you next week. Thanks, everyone.
Thanks. Bye.